Welcome to NHA Today, where we explore the path to lasting health and fulfillment through a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Each week, we bring you real conversations with doctors, health experts, and everyday individuals who have transformed their lives through food, mindset, and community. This is NHA Today, powered by the National Health Association.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NHA Today podcast. My name is Cyd Notter. I'm a nutrition educator, a coach, and an author, and I'm delighted to be your guest host for today's episode. And we have a really special guest lined up today. Her name is Jennifer Diamond, and I met her maybe 1 or 2 years ago now. I was trying to think. We met through, I believe, a bundle. We were both participating in a bundle, and now we both volunteer for the plant-based support group as we volunteer to host special meetings there. And so I have just really enjoyed getting to know her, and I think you're going to find her to be fabulous as well. Let me tell you a little bit about her background. Jennifer is a certified plant-based nutrition coach who transformed her life through whole food plant-based eating after suffering through years of chronic and debilitating disease and illnesses. Her lifestyle changes not only restored her health, but also supported her through times of grief, becoming a powerful tool for her emotional and physical healing. Today, she shares practical recipes, compassionate coaching, and real-life inspiration to help others thrive, even through life's hardest moments. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So welcome, Jennifer. It is so good to have you here.
What a beautiful and warm introduction. Thank you so much, Cyd. I really appreciate you inviting me. And yes, we've met through this beautiful whole food plant-based lifestyle, and I've been very grateful ever since. And so, what a great welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the title that you wanted to talk about was Grief and Greens and how to eat to feel but not to numb. Could you talk a little bit more about that topic?
Yeah. So, probably the last year and a half has been a really challenging time for me and my family. We've gone through a lot of different types of grief. And I just felt like, when it became heavy, when there were a lot of different types of grief, I just felt like, my goodness, I wanted to be able to turn somewhere to be able to talk to people in the whole food plant-based space about it. And I didn't really find what I was, looking for. I mean, there's stuff out there. There's always people and communities to turn to. But I felt like, maybe if I share some of the things that I've gone through or some of the things that I've tried, maybe it would help somebody who is dealing with different types of grief. And the different types of grief could be a lot of different things. Like for us, loss of a job when you're not ready for it, loss of a parent. People have different losses of children and spouses and different kinds of things like that. There's so many different types of losses. So it's not just a death, which is, hard enough, but, estrangement from family, and just different other types of grief that we go through and loss that I think can play it can be really difficult when leading this lifestyle and worrying about our own health already has its challenges when things are great.
Yeah, so you mentioned that over the last year and a half, you've experienced some hard times for sure. What are some ways that you stayed on track when those emotions are high? What helped you to get through it?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is when I experience loss and I experience grief, it wasn't something that I had warning about. It just, for me, I didn't know it was coming,
Mm.
And so the shock was really difficult to try to deal with. But the ways that I have dealt with it so far is just like slowing down, you know, and looking for other ways to deal with emotion. And, you know, like doing things that make you happy, like I like dance. So if somebody is into dance, or I like to do, if you ever watched me on my own YouTube, I like to dance with my appliances. And so, but any type of dance, anything that would bring me up, lift me up, is something that I think is important. So maybe for someone else, it might be volunteering at a shelter, or a hospital, or a nursery, or some kind of thing like that, picking up a hobby, learning how to play an instrument. Focus on something that is going to help with the emotions, and then also just kind of slowing things down.
Yeah. And how did food come into that, into that whole process when you're in a time of grief? How did food play a part in that for you personally?
Yeah, so at first it was fine. I was able to stay on course the way that I like to live, because I chose whole food, plant-based, SOFAS-free, gluten-free lifestyle for health. And it has helped. It has helped me restore my own health. And but what I learned is that I felt like a loss was kind of like, not like being punched, but like, having being knocked down, being knocked down. So I could get back up. And when I get back up, I'm on track, right? I'm still eating the way that I normally have. Everything is good, you know. But when it kept happening, other things, other losses, even another, huge cancer diagnosis within our family, so I felt like knockdown, knockdown, knockdown. After so many knockdowns, getting up is, you could still do it, but I feel tired, and I feel worn, and I feel like maybe there's something about the old food that I was curious about. So what would that mean? Like, remembering the good feeling from those dopamine hits, or the commercials, or the memories of parties, the happiness, the fun, the nurturing, the loving. I feel like some of those memories when you're down, um, might seem like a good idea. And so, you know, for me, I looked around. I certainly did. I was definitely interested in self-soothing in a way that is an old habit.
Mm.
Um, and so that's another thing that I wanted to talk about, because it's only, I believe that you can do that, but it's really only going to complicate things depending on your reason for living this lifestyle. So, if it's for health, it might not show up right away, but over time it'll be more complicated, and some of your old health things might come up, and you might find yourself in an even bigger problem. So yeah, that's what I would say about that. And um, you know, you're also making yourself unhealthy in the process, which is not the goal. That's not the goal. And
Right.
so yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. As an emotional eater myself, I want to look for comfort foods, when my emotions are high. And I heard one tip one time that makes total sense. If we can put the pause between the trigger and our decision, even a 5-second pause to maybe make a different choice than what we're about to do, which is go look for the ice cream or whatever it is that we're looking for. I know it's harder even with grief. Grief is a really tough emotion. I think 3 months ago, we lost two family members. One was unforeseen, a little 3-year-old nephew that died unexpectedly. And then my sister passed away as well, all within about 10 days of each other. So that was, like you said, kind of a double whammy for sure. And yeah, it's easy to be looking for comfort foods during that time of stress.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry for your losses. Um, just because I know, you know, I mean, like I said, we have different experiences with loss, but
Mhm.
any of those that I had mentioned can be quite impactful and can be very difficult to deal with. You know, another thing is when I'm sick, when I was sick, when I was bedridden, when I had all these, complications with my health, I had some control. Once I knew what I wanted to do and how I wanted to try it, and I realized it was working, I was in control of that. It was my decision if I wanted to continue moving forward. And I
Mhm.
did. But with grief and with loss, it's usually not something that a person is in control of.
Mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
think that that's a component that's really challenging and can be very difficult if you, especially if you don't know. Some people know that, an elderly grandparent or great grandparent is not doing well and they have, or they're very elderly or, you have time.
Yeah.
But and I'm not saying that that's any easier, but it's just different. For
Mhm.
me, I didn't have time. I didn't know. I just was in the middle of my life, and we found out we had job loss.
Mhm.
And then, we're trying to stumble and figure that out. And then, I found out without any warning that, my father was dying on morphine drip. And, there was an estrangement there because he was not a well person. And, and then after that, within a few weeks, then I found out we had a family member that has stage 4 bone cancer. And then we had other issues where, my family, some of my family, some of my grandchildren moved far away, and just things that are out of my control. But it's back to
Mhm.
back to back to back. And it's like, okay, what can I do to get through this? I mean, logically, you want to just find different ways to do things the way you would do them when you're feeling good, right? Exercise, eat the good foods, journal, meditate, breath work, all that stuff. But in the moment, sometimes I felt like I know better, but I don't care. I'm mad or I'm sad or
Mhm.
I just want the bag of whatever because I remember that that was something that felt good. And I might not even rationalize that in the moment. I might just do it out of an emotion, you know?
Mhm.
And then, of course, my wonderful husband and spouse, would say, like remind me, like, that has so and so in it and you don't eat that. Well, that just makes me more mad because I know, And
Yeah.
so it's just really hard to figure stuff out like that. But I want to say one thing that I learned is that I'm a human being.
Mhm.
I'm imperfect. Um, I'm allowed to grieve and I try to allow myself grace. And so, knowing that, um, and just trying to take a step back and just stop for a minute, try to stop the madness that happens in the head, because I think a lot of things happen with our thoughts. You could still be successful and find good in the grief.
Mhm. I think so many times we try to stuff our emotions down with food when it's normal to have emotions, right? We don't think of that, but it's quite normal to have emotions, and we should let them maybe come to the front and center and face them, and think about them rather than try to stuff them down with food as we sometimes do.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially also like if you're dealing with this and you haven't allowed yourself time to grieve, and maybe you're in positions where you're in a workplace or you're surrounded by other people, and they're sharing donuts or foods that are not helpful to healing or to this way of life. It could be really easy to be caught up in a moment of sorrow and just wanting to be a part of whatever you think you might be missing in that office or in that space where people are surrounding and enjoying and whatever kind of thing.
Hmm. You talked about habits too there. So I think about in my previous, before I became plant-based, all of the bad habits that I had surrounding food and how ingrained we can become in our habits, right? We can become so ingrained in our habits that it's really difficult to change. And then when we become emotional or have some type of loss in our life, sometimes those old habits could rear their ugly heads.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this, like, what would happen if, I mean, even if it's a vegan food, right? There's lots of vegan foods that are not something that I would want to partake in,
Mhm.
that are processed foods, right? What would happen? Well, depending on the person, maybe if you have issues with insulin or something right away, you might feel an impact right away, and that might be enough for you to snap back and realize, you know what, that's not what I thought it was going to be. The memory I have is not really what it was anymore, because we evolve and everything
Yeah.
changes from the microbiome all the way into our taste buds and everything else. But there are some people that they could try something, eat something for that same soothing type feeling, and nothing happens. And then it's
Mhm.
like, well, I don't think somebody eating something off one time in an instance like this or whatever is going to possibly hurt their health. But I think there's an impact about it, because if you do it and then you go, nothing happened. I'm still feeling this way and nothing happened. I'm going to do it again. And then it's two, and then it's three, and then it's five. And then you're gaining weight, or you're having your cholesterol numbers go up, or you're feeling sluggish, or whatever.
Mhm.
It's delayed. And
Yeah.
so that's something to consider, um, and think about.
Yeah. So why do you think that food has become such a common coping mechanism in today's age?
Well, first of all, it's brought us together as far back as I can remember, as a child, and family gatherings and every kind of interaction with people. For the most part, it's around food.
Mhm.
So, I think um, that we just have to find new ways to reinvent, um, like things that will help us.
Mhm.
So like you were saying, you remember, you were saying about like old habits and different things like that. Create new habits.
Mhm.
Just, I would say like slow down, slow down, allow yourself time, sit quiet with yourself, and then figure out, what would work for you, um, to not go in that direction. Kind of getting off topic, but you know, there's so many other things that we can do to support ourselves and to um, rise above things that we're out of control, and it doesn't have
Mhm.
to be in foods that are meant to harm, that aren't even real food. you know?
Right. Yes, I agree. We just have to figure out different coping strategies to deal with our emotions and our grief. And so that I think that takes some thought beforehand, before the events happen, because sometimes, as you mentioned, things are unforeseen that can take us totally off track. So, what are our coping mechanisms going to be beside food? Do we want to read or pray or be with people? There's so many other things, even walking, just anything to distract us away from food and actually maybe give us some peace as we're doing them.
Yeah, I would say getting out in nature is a big one,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that could be something as simple as sitting under a tree,
Mhm.
watching, you know, the birds or whatever your surroundings are. If you're near a beach or a lake or even a street, there's trees everywhere in a city or whatever. Something as simple as doing that or walking, like you said, exercising. Some people need to like, get the endorphins up a different way. So look for that way. You could exercise. That could be in nature also, hiking or whatever. Also, taking time to look in the mirror at yourself and say nice things about yourself.
Mhm.
Um, you know, listen to affirmations or repeat affirmations because
Mhm.
when we're down, sometimes, and I think often in society, we do tend to have some negative self-talk. Most people at some point in their life have, and this is not the time to beat yourself up for something that you're not even in control of, that you're just having an emotional response to.
Mhm.
So maybe, you know, figuring out ways to catch yourself and correct it. I like to call it rewind.
Mhm.
So if you say, oh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. Well,
Mhm.
it's okay to say, catch it and say, you know what? I'm going to rewind that and say something else like, I did a really good job today. I'm so proud of myself. I made sure that I got, a whole food plant-based meal in today. Instead of saying, I'm so stupid because I only got one. Like we have to figure out how to support ourselves. We only have ourselves to take care of ourselves, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Exactly. It does. It does. I think that self-talk is really important, as you were mentioning. I also have a thing on my website called limiting beliefs that we incorporate. Limiting beliefs about ourselves, like, oh, I'll never do that, I always fail at that. That's a limiting belief that we can cross off and replace it with, I'm capable of doing that. I'm confident, I'm a capable person, I could easily do that. Think of the positives rather than always and also talk to yourself as you would a best friend that was asking you for advice. You wouldn't say to your best friend, "Oh, you're such a loser." You would never say that to your best friend, but yet we will say that internally to ourselves, which is not good.
Yes. Yes. And you made me think of, so we were just talking about other ways. Uh, Try something new. You don't have to be great at it. Maybe you want to try painting and you're not an artist. It doesn't matter. You
Mhm.
know, uh, you know, I've been recently invited to a friend's house. We do a play date every once in a while, and she's a retired teacher, and she used to teach a lot of different things. But one thing she did was pottery, and I don't know the first thing about playing with clay.
Mm.
But I go over there and I play with clay. And it's not sometimes the way I wished it looked, right? Because we do a lot of hands-on stuff. But the idea is I'm changing my routine and I'm trying something new and I'm interacting and I'm learning. And as tired or as no time for this as my life may be, when I
Mhm.
leave, I always feel great. I never say I shouldn't have gone to do this,
Mhm.
And so sometimes we just have to just like I take a step back and and allow ourselves to try something new,
Mhm.
painting, coloring. It doesn't have to be exercise. I mentioned exercise earlier, but it could be learning a new instrument or, whatever. But it is really important, I think, for us. And then, another thing I wanted to talk about or ask is being aware of the lesson learned. So for me, I'm saying, why is all this happening? It's not necessarily happening to me, but it's affecting me. So I might someone might say, I can't believe this is happening to me. Why? That's a
Mhm.
common, but okay, so this is happening. I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm whatever, a feeling that's not my normal, happy, or whatever. First of all, I want to acknowledge that and I want to allow myself, if I want to cry,
Mhm.
it's okay. I cry.
Mhm.
And then I allow myself to not stay stuck in there. Then I have to move on and do something else. But I'm not trying to pretend it's not how I'm feeling, you know?
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
I've been asking myself lately, what's the lesson I'm supposed to learn here? I'm sure there's some reason that this is happening. And what is the lesson? I don't know what the lesson is yet, but I'll tell you, it made me stop and it made me really try to be really aware. And what I noticed is that some of those losses brought in positive things. Positive things surfaced. So I'll share a couple examples. So we had job loss. Um, and our son, was leaving he lived in a luxury apartment at the time, and he said his lease is up, and he was thinking about buying a house or doing something different. And we had told him about the job loss, and we had started a new company, and it takes time to build that. And so there was a lot of unknowns. And he said, what if you want, I'd love to move in and help you guys until things settle down. And I thought, oh my gosh, you don't have to do that. You like live your life, you know. And he basically said, Mom, I don't need to live with you. Would like to help you if you'd like help. And so we agreed, okay, let's try it. And if it doesn't work out, no hard feelings. It has been such an amazing, positive experience for us. And that would never have happened if we didn't have a negative thing happen. And, I can share a couple others if you want, or, we can talk about other things, but it's just trying to be aware. If you're sulking and you're busy, messing up your health again, or putting weight back on, or rewinding everything that you've worked so hard for, you might
Mhm.
miss some of these opportunities that can unravel and that are positive things coming from something that was very, heartbreaking. Um,
Exactly. Yeah, I remember hearing this one time and it always stuck with me that even in the darkest moments, there's always at least something to be grateful for. So find it, find the thing you can be grateful for. So yeah, I'd love to hear of the other examples that you had about
yeah.
something good that came out of a loss.
Yeah. Okay. So I mentioned my father passed away this year, um, and he had bipolar. He was a very ill man that I loved. I mean, I loved my dad, but because of his illness, I had a really hard time continuing a relationship with him, and so what was best for me for my mental health was to kind of back away. And so we had not been in contact. Um, I have a half brother that I also had not been in contact with. I'm not really sure what happened there. He had not been very kind to us. Um, and so, that was the end of that. Well, when my father passed away, um, it was very complicated. It was not like a normal. But one thing is that I realized I don't know if my half brother even knows. And I don't know how to find him or get a hold of him. So I decided to, with the internet and all these wonderful things, I decided to do a little research and see if I could find him, if nothing else, just to make sure that he knew that our father had passed. And I found a phone number and I called and I left a message and I never heard anything. And that's fine, right? And then when I wasn't expecting it, he called and we had a 2-hour conversation and he apologized. He said he has spent years, really upset about how he had treated us. I say us, my children were younger, and that he did a lot of work, with therapists and just really self work, and he rebuilt himself, and he did not know our father died. And he was really grateful that I went out of my way to find him and let him know. And he kind of said, if you're interested at your own pace, Jennifer, if you want to rebuild a relationship, I am open to that. And I understand whatever works for you. Oh my gosh. So my father's death brought my brother back in my life. And I learned that I have a sister-in-law and a niece. And so, you know, a lot of wonderful things can come out of not so great things.
Mhm.
So,
That is so incredible that happened. I mean, and that's a good example of something good that can come out of even the worst circumstance sometimes.
yeah, I mean, I had no idea he was going to respond. I kind of gave up on it. And then for some of the first words to be an apology, I mean, wow, and just being really considerate of where I am in my life was really a fantastic experience. So
Right. And I know gratitude is one of the last things that might be crossing our mind when we're in the midst of a loss or grief or some emotional upset. But it really does help to think about what positive could come out of this, because it'll help keep your perspective in alignment. It does for me anyway. And yeah, I think it's really important. So, what are some practical steps that you would advise people to take when they find themselves in a time of grief, and they're more likely to reach for unhealthy food? We've talked about many of them already, like developing a different coping strategy,
yeah.
even taking a hot bath and having a cup of tea, just anything that's going to work for you. I mean, this is such a personalized solution, right? It's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah. And I would say those two that you just said, having a cup of tea and a bath. I love a bath, but some people don't. So you have to find out what it is that makes sense for you, and maybe being grateful for how far you've come and appreciate what what you have done so far. Recognize and celebrate some simple pleasures. A cup of tea
Mhm.
is a simple pleasure. A sunset, a smile from your spouse or loved one or child. Just loving yourself, however, whatever makes you feel loved
Mhm.
and supported. Um, you know, Gratitude. I know a lot of people have gratitude journals. And you know what? I know it's not always easy to be trying to focus on positive things when you feel like you're drowning or you've got all of this stuff like, these losses and griefs. you don't have to always do it. Like when it feels right for you, know that you can do it, know that it's there. And that's even including calling a friend, from that you haven't spoken to in a long time,
Mhm.
or getting involved in community, potlucks, go see a play, watch a funny movie, get silly with your friend or your neighbor or your loved one, do something, and laughter. I mean, watching a comedy or going to a comedy show, things like that. You don't have to do them all. They're suggestions. But if you find yourself going down a place that's going to be destructive to your health, know that you just got to, I think, take the step back, acknowledge it, maybe allow yourself to feel, what am I feeling? What am I
Mhm.
feeling? What do I do with that? How do I feel when I eat really healthy, whole food, plant-based food? Remember what that feels like. Well, I don't go take a nap. I've got energy. I feel good. I don't get upset stomach. I don't have reflux. I don't have medication. All the things, whatever that is. And then that might be a good thing. And if you're really down and you have some days that are really good days and some days that are not, on the good days, prep your food. Make sure instead of going to that convenient drive-through or that convenient bag of whatever, that on the good days, maybe have something in the freezer that you made. And then when it's not such a great day, reach for that quick item, right? Like a lentil stew or, something of that nature, a chili that's whole food plant-based with all the vegetables or some kind of veggie soup. You can make it when you feel good, divide it up, freeze it, and that can be the fast food. And then it's there for you. And boy, I bet you'll feel so good. When I
Mhm.
eat good food, it warms me. Like if it's a soup or something, it warms me and it feels good. And that can be kind of like a hug, kind of like you're going to be okay. Just allow yourself time.
Yeah, so make our favorite plant foods our comfort foods, right? Just change that in our mind. Fall back in love with our plant foods. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I know there are so many versions of mac and cheese, but it's not real like dairy cheese, and so if that's something that you're thinking of, think of maybe, oh, what's the plant-based version of that? I know
Mhm.
maybe I haven't had that in a while. I'm gonna have that. I think that's something that, is
Mhm.
comforting. It feels good to you. It's not gonna harm you. So
Right.
that in the long run, I think that will really help you. The
Hmm.
the grief has a process. Um, we can't rush it, but we can't hide from it either.
Hmm. Right. We have to face it. We can't flee from it. That's for sure. I think what you said earlier, too, about knowing things will get better, brighter days are ahead. Keep that in mind that brighter days are ahead. They might not be next week, but they are ahead. And keep that in mind, as your hope, as a hopeful thing to be thinking about.
Yeah, when I went through some of my surgeries, I had a pituitary adenoma removed. It's at the base of the brain. And that was a horrifying thing to realize that I had to deal with. And one of the nurses that knew some of my other surgeries, and she was a very lovely lady I saw often, and we became friendly. She said something that a lot of people hear, but for me, it really resonated. She looked at me and she said, "This too shall pass." And I
Mhm.
wrote that down and I would look
Mhm.
at it. And you know what? That surgery, that recovery, that experience, it did pass. And now I
Mhm.
have another experience, good, bad, or
Yeah.
indifferent. It's going to also pass. So
Mhm.
while it's happening, do the best you can for yourself. We get one life to live. Let's live it to the fullest.
Very good. Very good advice. So tell us how people can find you and learn more about you. I know you do coaching, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I'm a certified plant-based nutrition coach. You
Mhm.
can reach me on my website. It's thejennifferdiamond.com. And if you're interested in reaching out for coaching, you can go on there and there's an easy tab to find, and you can send me a little note, and I'd be happy to talk with you and figure out how I may be able to help you. I also have a YouTube channel. It's the Jennifer Diamond on YouTube, and I share about my life. I wear a weighted vest and how I'm combating osteoporosis and different foods that I eat. I go live Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm in Arizona, so we don't change our clocks. So when the clocks change, will be mountain time. But and I try to just be there on Instagram and some other social media platforms as well.
Very good. Well, do you have any parting words of wisdom before we sign off for today?
Well, I think that, we just have to remember that we're not alone, even if we feel alone. That sometimes things don't make sense to us because maybe what is supposed to come out of it hasn't come out yet. Um, just try to create new habits, something that's going to help you, not going back to the old habit, but creating a new habit, right? We evolve as people all the time. I mean, we're growing, we're energy in motion. So it's wonderful to continue to allow yourself to be curious about things, and don't kind of, stay stuck, acknowledge your feelings, but then try to find something that's going to really lift you up. This world we live in, I know it's crazy, and we have lots of issues on this planet, but there's some beautiful experiences that life offers. Enjoy them. Enjoy them. You all deserve it. And then, take an apple with you and stick it in your pocket and and just nurture yourself. That's what I would say.
Very good. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for everybody that's tuning in and watching. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye bye now.
Thank you so much, Cyd. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the NHA Today podcast. Subscribe and follow the National Health Association on YouTube and social media for the latest in plant-based science and healthy lifestyle support. For more resources, articles, and information about our membership and conference, visit healthscience.org. Until next time, here's to your plant-powered health.